Ethan stood nervously outside the grand doors of the Elorian High Council. The building was unlike anything he had ever seen before, shimmering with a strange iridescence, as if it were made of liquid light. The people of Eloria had long been known for their advanced technology and peaceful ways, and today, Ethan was here to witness the next step in the historic alliance between Earth and Eloria. He was a young diplomat, chosen for this important mission. Though he had trained for years, the weight of the occasion made him anxious. This wasn't just about politics. It was about the future of two worlds meeting, and he had to make a lasting impression. The doors opened, and he was greeted by an Elorian official. His guide was tall and elegant, with long silver hair that flowed like a river of moonlight. His calm voice echoed as he led Ethan through the corridor, past walls that pulsed with soft, glowing light. Ethan kept his eyes focused ahead, reminding himself that this was not the time to be distracted. As they walked deeper into the heart of the council building, he thought about the task ahead. Humanity had been invited to Eloria to discuss trade, technology sharing, and a joint defense alliance. But as important as these topics were, they were not the only things Ethan had heard about the Elorian royal family. Princess Zalia. Her name was whispered like a legend. Known for her beauty, intelligence, and kindness, she was not just royalty. She was a symbol of hope for her people. Ethan had heard stories about her, a woman of strength and wisdom, but he had never imagined meeting her in person. As they reached the final set of doors, Ethan's guide turned to him with a smile. "The princess will see you now. Good luck." Ethan nodded, his heart racing as he stepped forward. The doors slid open, revealing a large circular chamber. The room was filled with floating holographic screens and soft, transparent fabrics that moved with the gentle breeze from hidden vents. In the center of the room, sitting upon a large throne made of smooth, silvery material, was Princess Zalia. She was everything the rumors had said and more. Her skin shimmered with a soft glow, her violet eyes sparkling with intelligence and curiosity. Her hair, the color of midnight, fell gracefully around her shoulders, and her regal attire seemed to flow like liquid silk, matching the room around her. There was a calm power in her presence, a quiet strength that made Ethan feel both awe and nervousness. Zalia turned her head, her eyes locking with his. There was no judgment, no superiority in her gaze, only curiosity and an openness that caught him off guard. "You must be the human diplomat," she said, her voice melodic and warm, but with a sharpness that spoke of her keen intellect. Ethan swallowed hard, trying to remember the words he had practiced. "Yes, Your Highness. It's an honor to meet you." Zalia smiled, and it was like the entire room brightened. "The honor is mine, Ethan. I've heard much about your people. I'm curious to see what you bring to our world." Her words set him at ease, but the pressure of the moment still weighed heavily on him. This was not a normal diplomatic meeting. He wasn't just representing Earth. He was standing before a royal figure whose people were depending on this alliance. Every word mattered. "Shall we begin?" Zalia asked, rising from her throne. She stepped down with a grace that seemed almost effortless, her movements like those of a dancer. Ethan found himself mesmerized by her presence, by how she seemed to command the space around her with nothing but her confidence. As they moved to a nearby table, where the council members were gathered, Zalia's attention remained fixed on Ethan. He felt as though she could see right through him, as though she knew every doubt, every fear that lingered in his mind. And yet, she said nothing, only continued to smile gently, as if she understood the pressure he was under. The conversation began with pleasantries. Zalia asked Ethan about Eartha, about the cultures, the history, the people. She seemed genuinely interested, and her questions were thoughtful, often delving into topics that Ethan had never expected to discuss. They spoke of music, art, and even the nature of human relationships, something that seemed to fascinate her deeply. As the conversation flowed, Ethan began to relax. He spoke more openly, feeling as though he could share things that had always seemed too personal. Zoya listened intently, her eyes never leaving his, her focus unwavering. She laughed at his jokes, and he felt a sense of connection that he hadn't anticipated at one point. She asked him about Earth's approach to diplomacy, and the topic shifted to alliances. As Ethan explained the intricacies of human politics and the careful balance of power between nations, Zalia nodded, her expression thoughtful. You speak of alliances? But what do you believe in, Ethan? She asked suddenly. What is it that drives you? Ethan blinked, surprised by the depth of her question. He had expected talk of treaties and agreements, but not this. This was personal. A window into his very soul. I believe in unity, he said slowly. I believe that despite our differences, we can come together to make a better future. Zalia's smile softened. And do you think that can happen between Eloria and Earth? Ethan's heart raced. This wasn't just diplomacy anymore. It was something more. He met her gaze, finding in her eyes not the cold distance he had expected from royalty, but a warmth that mirrored his own thoughts. I hope so. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The room felt as though it had faded into the background, leaving only the two of them in that quiet, shared space. Then, with a sudden shift in energy, Zoya tilted her head, her smile widening. Well, Ethan, she said, her voice a little playful now, I have to admit, you have a lot to offer. Ethan, still caught in the weight of the conversation, nodded, unsure of what to say. Then, to his surprise, Zalia's lips curled into a teasing smile. Wait, are you proposing to me? Ethan stood frozen, his face burning with embarrassment. He hadn't meant to say those words. It was a slip, a moment of panic, but now they hung in the air between him and the princess. His mind raced as he tried to think of anything to recover from the awkward moment. Zoya, however, didn't seem offended or upset. Instead, her smile widened, and she took a step closer to him. Her presence was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. She wasn't laughing at him, there was something in her expression that told him she was not bothered by his unexpected proposal. I'm sorry, Ethan stammered. That wasn't. Zalia raised a hand, cutting him off. It's all right, Ethan. I'm not offended. Her voice was calm, reassuring, with a gentle humor behind it. But I must admit, I didn't expect that. Ethan let out a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. He'd known this meeting wouldn't be easy, but he hadn't anticipated this level of confusion. I didn't mean to well propose to you. I just... I guess I got caught up in the moment. Zalia tilted her head, her violet eyes studying him carefully. Caught up in the moment? She mused, stepping back slightly, giving him some space. Shh. Tell me, Ethan, what was it about this moment that led you to such an unorthodox proposal? Ethan wasn't sure how to answer. The weight of her question was much deeper than just a simple misunderstanding. I don't know, I think I just... I felt something real, he said, his voice a little quieter now. This isn't just about the alliance, is it? It's about something more. I think I'm drawn to you in ways I don't fully understand. Zalia's smile softened, but there was a hint of sadness in her eyes. You are not the first person to say that. People are often drawn to Eloria's beauty and the mystery of its people. But Ethan, she paused, choosing her words carefully, I am not some treasure to be won or an object of fascination. I am a leader, a princess with responsibilities far greater than anything you could understand. Ethan nodded, feeling a pang of guilt. He had always heard stories of how royal figures like Zalia were revered, and it seemed that her life, her duties, came before anything else. But something about her strength and grace, made him feel an even deeper connection. He couldn't explain it. But he was certain that their bond went beyond the professional relationship of diplomats and royalty. I know, Ethan said, his voice more steady now. But that's just it, Zalia. I don't see you as a title or an object. I see you as someone who understands the burden of leadership, who has to make impossible decisions every day. I admire that, and I respect it. Zalia was silent for a moment, taking in his words. She turned her back to him, looking out of the large windows that overlooked the city below. The Elorian skyline sparkled with lights, and beyond that, the twin moons hung low in the sky. It was a breathtaking view, one that Ethan had seen from the palace every day since his arrival. But he hadn't seen it the way Zalia saw it. To her, it wasn't just a beautiful sight, it was a reminder of the responsibility she carried. The weight of her position. I've always known what it means to lead, she finally said, her voice quieter now. It's a constant struggle. Eloria is a peaceful planet, but even peace comes at a cost. People look to me for answers, for strength. They forget that sometimes I wish I didn't have to carry it all. I could just be ... human. Ethan's heart ached as he listened. To her, he had always known that royalty had their burdens, but hearing it from Zalia herself made him realize just how heavy that weight must be. He wanted to reach out to her, to offer support, but he wasn't sure if it was his place. Instead, he simply took a step closer, his voice gentle. You don't have to do it alone, Zalia. You have people who care about you, people who want to help, and maybe you can let yourself have a little bit of peace. Even if it's just for a moment. Zalia turned to face him, her expression softer now, but still guarded. You speak as if it's so easy, as if I can simply stop being the princess for a while and let someone else take my place. I don't know if it's easy, Ethan admitted, but I know you deserve it. You deserve to be more than just a symbol of Aloria's strength. You deserve to be happy. Zalia's eyes searched his face, as if trying to read his true intentions. Then she let out a small sigh. You have a strange way of making me believe things are possible. Ethan smiled slightly, feeling the tension between them ease just a little. I don't mean to make you believe anything. I just... want. You two know that you're not alone in this. I'll support you, no matter what. For a long moment, Zalia didn't speak. Instead, she studied Ethan with a new light in her eyes. He wasn't just a diplomat now. He was someone who saw her for who she was, not just for the role she played. And in that moment, Zalia realized that Ethan wasn't just here to represent Earth. He was here to be a friend, confidant, and maybe even more, perhaps. You're right, Zalia said finally, her voice softer. Perhaps I've spent too long thinking I had to carry everything on my own. Ethan smiled, relieved that their conversation was taking a turn for the better. Maybe we both have, he said gently. Maybe we can help each other. Zalia took a step forward, her eyes now filled with a mix of emotions. She didn't say anything for a moment, but her gaze softened, as though she was seeing Ethan for the first time in a new way. For a brief moment, the weight of her royal duties seemed to fade. She wasn't just a princess anymore. She was a woman, with hopes, dreams, and fears, just like anyone else. And in that moment, Ethan felt a bond form between them. One that was stronger than mere diplomacy. It was the beginning of something neither of them had expected, but both knew deep down would change their lives forever. The days that followed the unexpected proposal were filled with tension and anticipation. The atmosphere on Aloria had shifted in subtle ways, as if the entire planet were holding its breath. The Alorian High Council continued its discussions with the Earth delegation, but Ethan found himself unable to focus entirely on politics. His thoughts kept drifting back to the princess, the powerful, graceful woman who had captured his attention. From the moment he arrived, Zalia had been kind, patient, and incredibly intelligent, but there was also a part of her that was closed off, as if she had built walls around herself that no one could penetrate. Ethan couldn't help but wonder if he had crossed a line with his impulsive proposal. Even though she had brushed it off so easily, he hadn't expected her to take it seriously, not in the way he did. After all, he was just a human diplomat, and she was a princess, with responsibilities far beyond what he could comprehend. But the more time he spent with her, the more he felt that their connection went beyond mere politeness. It wasn't just about their countries, their governments, or the alliance they were trying to form. It was about something deeper. One afternoon, after a particularly long meeting with the council, Zalia invited Ethan to a quiet spot in the palace gardens. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the shimmering trees that dotted the landscape. The air was cool, and the scent of blooming flowers filled the space around them. Ethan followed her through the winding paths, his heart pounding in his chest as he tried to think of something to say, something that would break the tension between them. Finally, they stopped by a small, tranquil pond. The water reflected the soft light of the setting sun, and Zalia stood there for a moment, her hands clasped behind her back. She looked out over the water, her expression unreadable. "Ethan," she said softly, breaking the silence, "you asked me a question the other day, a question I haven't been able to stop thinking about." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He knew exactly what she was referring to. He had asked her to marry him in a moment of confusion, fear, and vulnerability. But what was this now? It was clear that the words hadn't been forgotten. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Ethan began, his voice unsteady. I didn't expect you to take it seriously. It just came out. Zalia turned to face him, her eyes reflecting the soft colors of the sky. There was something in her gaze, something softer than he had seen before. And yet you said it, and I couldn't ignore it. Ethan swallowed, his throat dry. I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I just... I don't know. I feel like we have something here, something real. But I also know that I'm just a human, and you're the princess. You have a life, a duty. And I'm not sure how someone like me could ever fit into that. Zalia stepped closer to him, her presence calm and steady. She reached out, her fingers brushing gently against his arm. You think that because you are human, you don't belong here. But let me tell you something, Ethan. It is not your species that matters. It is who you are, what you bring into the world that counts. And you've already shown me that you bring something unique, something powerful. Ethan's chest tightened as her words sank in. He had never thought of it that Wayne ever realized that it wasn't just about where he came from, but about who he was as a person. Still, he wasn't sure if Zoya understood the gravity of what he was feeling. His emotions were tangled, and there was so much he wanted to say, but he wasn't sure how to express it. I never thought I could feel this way, he admitted, his voice softer now. I never thought I would meet someone like you, someone who makes me feel like anything is possible. But I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if we could ever make this work. Zalia's face softened, and she took another step closer. The air between them seemed to pulse with unspoken emotions. For a moment, neither of them said anything, just standing there, letting the silence speak for itself. Then slowly, Zolia spoke. You're right, it's not easy. Nothing in my life has ever been easy. Being a princess, being a leader, it means sacrificing things that others might take for granted. I don't get to choose who I marry or what my future looks like. There are expectations, duties that I must fulfill, no matter what my heart desires. Ethan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had seen the way people treated her, the way they looked to her for answers, for guidance. She was more than just a princess. She was a symbol of her people's hopes, a figure who carried the responsibility of an entire planet on her shoulders. But that doesn't mean your heart doesn't matter, he said, his voice more certain. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't choose for yourself. I know that I can't offer you everything you're used to, but I can offer you honesty, respect, and the kind of love that's built on mutual trust. Zalia's gaze softened, and for the first time, Ethan saw a glimmer of something in her eyes, a vulnerability that she had kept hidden from the world. I don't know what the future holds. Ethan, she said quietly, I do know that. You have made me see the world in a different way. You've made me question things I never thought I would, and that scares me. Ethan reached out, his hand finding hers, and for a moment, everything else faded away. It was just the two of them standing there in the fading light of the day, facing the unknown together. I'm scared too, Ethan confessed. But maybe that's the first step toward something worth fighting for. Zalia smiled, and this time there was no teasing in her expression, only a quiet understanding. Perhaps you're right, she said softly. Perhaps this is worth fighting for. As they stood there, side by side, the sun set completely, and the stars began to appear in the sky above them. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, it didn't seem as frightening. With each passing moment, the bond between them grew stronger. And though they had no answers yet, they knew one thing for sure. Together, they were ready to face whatever came next. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty and reflection. Ethan and Zalia spent more time together, but the weight of their unspoken feelings hung between them like a delicate thread. The discussions about the alliance continued, but both of them knew that something more had developed, something that could not be ignored. As the royal palace buzzed with preparations for the summit, Ethan found himself constantly distracted. He couldn't stop thinking about Zalia the way her smile made him feel, the way her eyes seemed to understand him in ways no one else could. Yet the reality of her position was always there, looming over them. She was a princess, and he was a diplomat from another world. Their worlds were separate, and there was no easy way to bring them together, but he couldn't deny the pull he felt toward her. Zalia was not just a leader. She was a person with hopes, dreams, and fears, just like him. And in the quiet moments when they were alone, he began to see her not as a symbol of Valoria's strength, but as a woman who had to carry the weight of her people's expectations on her shoulders every day. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Zolia invited him once again to the garden. The air was cool, and the moonlight bathed everything in a soft, silver glow. This time, there was no pretense, no formalities. It was just the two of them, alone in the stillness of the night. Ethan stood by the edge of the pond, watching the ripples in the water. He wasn't sure what to say, how to express the confusion and longing that filled him. Zalia had invited him here, but did she see him the same way? Or was he just another human to her, a temporary connection until the alliance was sealed? Ethan. Zalia's voice broke through his thoughts. I've been thinking a lot about what you said the other day. Ethan turned toward her, his heart skipping a beat. She was standing a few feet away, her posture relaxed, but still regal, her dark hair gently swaying in the breeze. The expression on her face was serious. But there was no anger or disappointment, just a calm intensity. I didn't mean to make things complicated, Ethan said quickly, his voice full of regret. I never expected to put you in this position. I just I don't know, just felt like the right thing to say in the moment. But now, I'm not sure if you don't have to apologize, Ethan, she interrupted, her voice gentle but firm. What you said? It wasn't a mistake. You spoke from your heart, and I admire that. I need to think about it. Need to understand what it means for me, for Aloria, and for you. Ethan nodded slowly. He understood. She had responsibilities, people who depended on her, and her life was not just her own. He couldn't expect her to make such a decision. Lightly, Zalia took a step closer to him, her eyes softening as she regarded him with a look that made Ethan's heart race. I've been thinking about you too, Ethan, and about everything that's happened since we first met. It's been a whirlwind, hasn't it? Ethan smiled slightly, grateful for her honesty. Yeah, I didn't expect any of this. But it feels like like I've known you longer than just a few weeks. I feel the same, Zalia admitted, her gaze dropping to the ground for a moment. But that's the thing, isn't it? Everything about this feels different. I can't just ignore the reality of my position. I have to think about my people, my future. It's not just about me anymore. It's about what's best for Aloria, Ethan understood. He had always known that Zalia's role as a princess came with sacrifices, that she had to make choices that were beyond her personal desires. But even as he understood it, it still hurt. He had come to care for her deeply in such a short time, and the idea of not being part of her future seemed almost unbearable. But what about what you want, Zalia? Ethan asked quietly, stepping closer to her. What do you want beyond? All the duties, the expectations, and the responsibilities? Don't you deserve to choose what makes you happy? Zalia looked up at him, her eyes searching his face as if trying to understand his sincerity. For a moment she said nothing. Then her lips parted, and she spoke softly. I've never been allowed to think about my own happiness. I've always been told what's expected of me. I've never had the chance to simply choose for myself. Ethan felt a pang of sympathy. But you do now, he said. You have the power to make that choice. It's not easy, but you deserve it. Whatever it is, whatever makes you feel alive. Zalia's eyes glistened, and for a brief moment, Ethan saw the vulnerability in her that she so often hid. I don't know if I can have both, she whispered. I don't know if I can be the Princess Aloria needs and the person you want me to be. Ethan reached out, gently taking her hand in his. The simple touch sent a jolt through him. Zalia, I don't want to pressure you. I just want you to know that whatever happens, I'm here for you. You don't have to face this alone. You've shown me so much kindness and strength, and that's what I admire. It's you, not just your title. Zaya's breath caught in her throat, and she squeezed his hand. There was something unspoken between them now, something raw and genuine. She took a deep breath, looking up at the stars above them, and The first time, she seemed at peace with the decision she had to make. "You've made me see that I don't have to choose between duty and happiness," she said softly. "Maybe I can find a way to have both, in some way I can't even imagine yet." Ethan's heart lifted. It wasn't a yes, but it was more than he had hoped for. They weren't ready to make promises yet, but something had changed between them. There was now a possibility, a hope that they could have a future together. Zalia looked back at him, her smile genuine. "Thank you, Ethan, for making me believe it's possible. I'll always believe in you, Zalia," he said quietly, "no matter what happens." They stood there for a moment, their hands still intertwined, looking out over the peaceful garden. The weight of their world still hung in the balance, but for the first time, they both felt as though they were not alone in the struggle. The future was still uncertain, but at least now they faced it together. The next few days were filled with action. The peaceful alliance between Earths and Eloria, which had seemed so promising at first, was now in jeopardy. News of a growing threat from the Zaurin, an aggressive alien species from the neighboring star system, reached the royal palace. The Zaurin had made it clear that they wanted control over Eloria's resources, and they were not willing to negotiate. Ethan and Zalia found themselves thrust into a situation that neither of them had expected. The council had summoned emergency meetings, and both Earth and Eloria were forced to focus on their combined defense. Zalia had no choice but to take the lead. As the princess, it was her duty to protect her people, and she would not let the Zaurin take everything she had fought for. Despite the pressure, Zalia remained composed. But Ethan could see the strain in her eyes. The weight of leadership was heavy, and the responsibility she carried seemed to grow by the hour. Still, she never wavered. "You've been through a lot already, Zalia," Ethan said one evening. As they reviewed strategies for defense, "You don't have to do this alone. Let me help." Zalia looked at him with a faint smile. "I know you want to help, Ethan, but this is my battle. Eloria's battle. I can't ask you to take on the weight of an entire planet." Ethan shook his head. "You're not asking me? I'm offering. We're in this together, whether you want it or not. If the Zaurin attack, Earth will fight by your side." Zalia's expression softened. She had grown to trust Ethan, but asking him to join the war effort was something she hadn't considered. "I don't want you to risk your life for me, Ethan." "I'm not just doing it for you," he replied. "I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. We built something here, something that could change the galaxy. Not letting anyone take that away from us." His words struck a chord with Zalia. She realized then that Ethan wasn't just speaking from duty, he was speaking from the heart. And in that moment, she knew that his presence, his support, meant more to her than she could explain. "We'll fight together then," she said finally, her voice firm but full of emotion. "But we need a plan. We need to be smart about this." Next few days were a blur of preparations and briefings. The Elorian military worked with the Earth delegation to create a joint defense strategy. Ethan found himself working alongside Zalia, offering suggestions based on human tactics and learning about Elorian methods in return. The two of them spent long hours together, strategizing and refining their approach. The chemistry between them, which had started out as tentative, now blossomed into something stronger, a partnership built on trust and mutual respect. One evening, after a long day of strategizing, Ethan and Zalia found themselves in the quiet of the palace garden. Once again, the stars above twinkled brightly, and the soft rustle of the wind through the trees created a peaceful atmosphere. It was a welcome break from the chaos that had surrounded them. Ethan sat on the edge of the pond, looking out at the reflection of the stars in the water. Zalia joined him, sitting close, but not too close, as if unsure of the space between them. There was an unspoken tension now, a mix of the personal and the professional. They had both changed, and they both knew it. "This is all so overwhelming," Zalia said, her voice soft as she stared at the water. "Sometimes I wonder if I'm strong enough to carry the weight of all of this." Ethan looked at her, his heart aching for her. "You don't have to carry it alone, Zalia. I've told you before, I'm here for you, not just as a diplomat, but as someone who believes in you. You're stronger than you think." Zalia turned to him, her eyes searching his face. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Ethan. You've shown me that I don't have to do this alone, and That I don't have to be so rigid in my duties. I've learned that there is more to life than just responsibility. There's a chance for happiness, for something real. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him at her words. You deserve it, he said quietly. You deserve to be happy. And you deserve a future where you don't have to choose between duty and love. Zoya looked at him, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her lips. I don't think I've ever allowed myself to think about what I want, but maybe I'm starting to. Maybe I can have both. The words hung between them, full of possibility and hope. For the first time, it seemed like the future wasn't so uncertain. There was still a war to face, still battles to be fought, but Ethan and Zalia both knew that no matter what happened, they would face it together. As the days passed, the Zalrin made their move. The first wave of attacks hit Aloria's outer colonies, and the Joint Defense Forces sprang into action. Ethan found himself working side by side with Zoya, planning the defense and coordinating efforts. The fight was intense, but they had prepared for it. And though the odds were stacked against them, they held their ground. During the battle, Ethan couldn't help but admire Zalia's strength. She fought with courage and determination, never once hesitating, even when the situation seemed dire. She wasn't just a princess, she was a leader, a warrior, someone who inspired everyone around her. Ethan was right there beside her, his own resolve firm, doing everything he could to help protect her and her people. The Zalrin were fierce, but together. The united forces of Earth and Aloria proved to be more than a match for them. The battle wasn't over yet. But as the enemy forces retreated, Zalia and Ethan stood side by side, looking out over the battlefield. The war had only just begun, but they knew one thing for sure. They were no longer just allies, they were something more. And whatever came next, they would face it together. The battle was far from over, but for the first time since the Zalrin invasion began, there was a sense of hope. The combined forces of Earth and Aloria had managed to hold their ground against the enemy's first wave. But everyone knew it wasn't enough. The Zalrin were relentless, and they had only just begun their assault. Despite the overwhelming odds, Zalia and Ethan remained resolute. They spent every moment in the command center, planning their next steps, coordinating strategies, and keeping in constant communication with both their forces and the Earth delegation. Ethan had never imagined he would be involved in something like this. But standing next to Zoya, working side by side with her, he realized how much their bond had deepened since the first day they had met, in the quiet moments between the chaos. They exchanged glances that spoke volumes. There was a trust between them now, one that went beyond politics or duty. They had fought together, shared the weight of their responsibilities, and through it all, they had come to understand each other in a way that words couldn't express. One evening after another, long day of planning and preparation, Zalia invited Ethan to the garden once again. The stars shone brightly overhead, and the air was calm. The quiet of the night was a welcome break from the tension that filled the palace. Zalia sat down by the pond, her fingers grazing the surface of the water as Ethan joined her. The battle raged on, but for this moment, they were just two people who had fought for something greater than themselves. Do you ever wonder, Ethan, how we got here? Zalia asked softly, her eyes still fixed on the water. Ethan sat beside her, looking up at the stars. I think about it all the time, he replied. How everything started with a simple mission. I came here to represent Earth, and now I'm standing here beside you, fighting for a future I never imagined. Zoya nodded. I never expected to be in this position either. I thought my life would be one of duty and responsibility. But then you came, and everything changed. Ethan turned to face her. I didn't mean to disrupt your life, Zoya. I never expected things to turn out this way, but I'm glad they did. Zoya smiled softly, the moonlight catching the delicate curve of her lips. I'm glad too. I've learned so much from you, Ethan. You've shown me that there's more to life than duty, that sometimes we can choose our own path, even when the world around us seems to be telling us otherwise. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. I never thought I'd be the one showing you that. I thought you were the one who always had the answers. I thought so too, she said quietly. but you've made me realize that there's always room to grow, to change." For a moment, they both sat in silence, the weight of their words settling between them. The galaxy around them was filled with uncertainty, but in that moment, it felt as though the universe had paused, allowing them to simply be. Then Zolia turned to him, her expression serious. "Ethan, I need to ask you something." "Anything," he replied, his voice steady but filled with curiosity. If we survive this war," Zolia began, her voice barely above a whisper, "and if we win, ... what happens then? What we do with what we've built together?" Ethan's heart raced. This was the question he had been avoiding. What came after the war? Could they go back to being just a diplomat and a princess? Or had they already crossed a line they could never uncross? "I don't know," he admitted, "but I know one thing. I don't want to go back to a life where we just let things happen. To us, I want to build something with you, Zalia. Not just for our people, but for ourselves. Something real." Zalia's gaze softened, and for a moment she seemed to lose herself in the intensity of his words. Then she nodded. "I want that too. I want a future where I don't have to choose between duty and happiness. A future where I can have both." Ethan reached for her hand, his touch gentle but sure. "Then let's fight for that future. Let's fight for a life where we can make those choices together." Zalia looked at him, her eyes searching his face, as if looking for any sign of doubt. But all she saw was sincerity. "You're right," she said quietly. "We can't wait for things to change on their own. We have to make the change." As they stood there together, hands intertwined, the sound of distant explosions echoed through the palace, reminding them that the war was far from over. But in that moment, they knew that no matter what happened, they had each other. And that was a powerful force in itself. The next morning, they gathered their forces for the final push against the Zaurin. The war had taken its toll, but Zalia and Ethan were more determined than ever. They had made a promise to each other to fight for a future they both believed in, and now they would do whatever it took to protect it. In the heart of the battlefield, surrounded by the chaos of war, Zalia and Ethan led their forces with unwavering strength. Their unity both as allies and as something more gave the soldiers hope. They fought not just for their planets, but for the future they had chosen together. A future where they could live without the weight of duty holding them back. The battle raged for hours, but in the end, they succeeded. The Zaurin were forced to retreat, their forces scattered and broken. It wasn't a victory without cost, but it was a victory nonetheless. The alliance between Earth and Eloria had been tested, but it had emerged stronger than ever. As the dust settled, Zalia and Ethan stood together, looking out over the battlefield. They had fought for each other, and for the future they both believed in. "We did it," Zalia said, her voice filled with awe. "We really did it." Ethan smiled, his hand resting on hers. "Together," he said softly. "We did it together." And as they looked toward the future, they knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as allies, partners, and something more. Their journey had only just begun, but it was a journey they would take together, side by side,